The story of ARK is told from many different perspectives, people from all kinds of time periods, regions, and with drastically differing beliefs. The struggles of these past survivors, how they interact with one another, and what they do to shape the fate of the arcs that they're stuck on, or escape from, impact us as players, and serve as the bridge between the very complex, overarching story and our regular gameplay. So in today's video, we'll be going over the top 10 community-voted characters in ARK's story. Also, shout out to Raz Clark, who is known for doing top 10s. Check out his channel for many more of these if it's the type of thing that you like. So without further ado, here are the top 10 characters in ARK Survival Evolved as decided by you, the viewers, in the community vote. Coming in at number 10, we have Raya, the Egyptian priestess from Scorched Earth known for her compassion, intelligence, and drive to keep people safe. This character is one who's had some of the most development over the course of her story, going from a pacifist who wouldn't even hurt people who threatened her with violence, to someone who keeps her identity unknown and is not afraid to kill anything that poses significant danger to her. Quite the character development, if you ask me. But aside from that, Raya is one of the most important characters in the story of Scorched Earth, as she eventually goes on to help other characters like Helena and Rockwell in their journey to understand the arcs. I expected Raya to be higher on this list, but ARK does have quite a few characters, so it's understandable. Coming in at number 9, we have Diana Altaris. Being one of the ARK's most iron-willed and determined characters, Diana is a pretty badass person. She ends up carrying out many very important missions for the survivors on Aberrant, but is simultaneously a compassionate and understanding character that really sticks her neck out for other survivors. She's also really the only character that talks extensively about what Aberrant looked like before it was destroyed. Given that Diana is one of the characters that has massive significance on Aberrant, and we're currently working on the Aberrant survival stories, I'm gonna zip it since I don't want to spoil too much if you don't already know a lot about her. But needless to say, she is really awesome. In the number 8 spot, it comes as no surprise that we see Gaius Marcellus Nerva. This warlord is one of the most relevant characters, at least to the island, and is personally one of my all-time favorites. Nerva is an intelligent character that sticks with his philosophy consistently, never breaking from it, which unfortunately was one of his greatest flaws in the end. After seeing how barbaric the tribes of the island were, Nerva seeked to conquer them into submission and build an army of men and women under his new rule, with the New Legion. Perhaps I'm a little biased, but working on Nerva's survival story was one of my most memorable experiences with my team, and he was just an especially fun character to try and understand, and so I'm glad he's this high on the list. Now at the number 7 spot, we have The One Who Waits. This character is a little mysterious, and if you don't know who or what it is, then I'm not going to spoil that for you. But ultimately, The One Who Waits is a transformed version of one of the most important characters to the story who became a Homo Deus. The One Who Waits seeks to disseminate knowledge to the survivors in order to aid them in building up the strength to ultimately save the Earth from corruption. Being an omniscient creature, The One Who Waits can't really exist in a physical plane, but leaves their notes around in these cool little note things that give survivors a 4 times XP boost as opposed to the regular 2 times. When it comes to general background knowledge of ARK's history and story and stuff about the Element Wars too, The One Who Waits is one of the most knowledgeable and speaks in a really cool way, definitely giving off the vibe of an omniscient creature. And one that certainly seems to care for the survivor, not just for their utility, but also because of a clearly shared experience of trying desperately to survive, which The One Who Waits knows as well as they know themselves. Coming in at number 6, Santiago da Costa. This character is a fairly popular one because, as many of you know at this point, one of the iterations of his character is being played by the one and only Vin Diesel, specifically in one of ARK 1's ending cutscenes and in ARK 2. But beyond that, Santiago is a lot more complex than just the mere fact that his character is being played by a very well-known actor. This man is responsible for arguably causing Earth to become as destroyed and corrupted as it did as fast as it did, but that isn't to say he's an evil person. Santiago is a character who has a relatively short temper, but is caring for those around him, and has the mind of a genius when it comes to technology. with many accomplishments in his life on Earth, such as hacking into the URE command center, reverse engineering tech armor for the Federation, and building several extremely dangerous element-based weaponry for war. Santiago has quite a lot of destructive or impressive feats under his belt by the time he becomes part of the main story, though he isn't necessarily proud of them. Ultimately, this is one of the only characters who has had multiple lives across the story, without spoiling too much, but these lives are lived several hundreds of years apart, and I recommend watching my How Many Times Has Santiago Respawned video if you're curious about that. Halfway through the list at number 5, we see the fan favorite Beast Queen of the Jungle, Mei-Yin. Mei is one of the most important characters to the story, acting as the arch nemesis of Nerva on the island and being an influential character on Aberration and Extinction as well. My team and I often joke that Mei canonically uses console commands because there are far too many times when she just straight up cheated, like, for example, taming a Giga with a pack of Raptors, or bringing a Giga into the Megapithecus arena, somehow surviving being burned on the surface for like 5 seconds. Or, lastly, this one isn't really a bug as much as it is an exploit, using the tech sword glitch while fighting Rockwell. But at the end of the day, we still love this character even if she's very broken, and even if, in Diana's words, her muscles are cheat codes. Aside from being one of the physically strongest and most dangerous people in the story, Mei-Yin also loves to tame creatures, hence the name Beast Queen. At number 4, we travel back to Scorched Earth to give some attention to Mr. John Dakea. This one is a very highly esteemed fan favorite, though I can't help but think that's because of the amazing performance of Spencer Cannon, who voiced him in the John Dakea survival story. One thing I didn't account for with the polls which made up this community vote was the sheer popularity of these characters because of their voice actors in the survival stories as opposed to their personalities and actual story arcs themselves. But nonetheless, John Dakea was a typical bandit in his past life who had originally come from an Apache Native American tribe. After leaving his tribe, he gradually came to adopt characteristics like that of people like John Marston from the Red Dead Redemption series. But after meeting Raya once he's reborn on Scorched Earth, John begins to have a change of heart and seeks to instead help people with similar goals to Raya. John and Raya together and their romance is one of the most tragic parts of ARK's story, and I do recommend checking out our survival stories on them as well. Coming in at number 3, as really no surprise at all, is Sir Edmund Rockwell. Being perhaps the most or second most well-known character in the game, Rockwell not only has a presence in the story as one of the Explorer note writers, but is also a boss on 3 maps. So it is safe to say that Rockwell has a lot of influence on the game's story. From the beginning, Rockwell is just a scientist who uses slightly unethical practices, but doesn't do anything too barbaric. Over time, though, Edmund becomes gradually obsessed with power and finds Element, which he dubs Edmundium after himself. This narcissism and obsession gets more and more violent and unpredictable, until Rockwell ultimately does irreversible damage and causes death and suffering to many around him, becoming ARK 1's ultimate antagonist in both the Legacy and Genesis storylines. I don't want to spoil too much, but if you're familiar with ARK's story at all, this isn't too new. Nearing the end of our list, in the number 2 slot is our robot friend HLN-A. Going down is a memorable, whether you love or hate this thing, robot companion that guides you on your journey through Genesis 1 and 2. HLN-A has her moments. This robot companion not only allows you to use hexagons and other mechanics within the Genesis maps, but also has her own Explorer notes where she talks about strange occurrences in the Genesis simulation and what the status is on the Genesis colony ship. HLN-A has notes across all the Legacy maps as well, but they act a lot like the one who waits' notes, serving as part of the Chronicles updates that merely give some filler information and shouldn't actually exist there, technically. Nonetheless, HLN-A is a complex little robot AI that stems from the personality of Helena Walker, but is not to be confused with Walker herself. Having gone through an entire voice actor change from the bubbly performance of Amber Lee Connors to the more realistic, authentic, and serious tone of Madeline Madden, HLN-A still retains her general personality and goal of being a guide for the survivor, so that, much like the one who waits, they can ultimately save something precious to preserving humanity. Now, before I unveil the number 1 spot, I'd like to go over a few honorable mentions who didn't make it to the top 10. And so without further ado, the number 1 spot goes to Helena Walker. Consistently in polls that I've done in the past, Helena has always been the most popular, and you can imagine why. Canonically, she wrote all of the story map creature dossiers, as well as being present on all of the legacy maps, from the island to Scorched Earth, Aberration, and finally Extinction. While Helena isn't responsible for causing any major events as a human beyond having to forfeit important trophies that Nerva went on to use, or helping Rockwell in getting to Aberration, she does a lot to advance the story, especially in Extinction. Again, I won't spoil too much, but Helena is an incredibly important character in the end, and one that is tied to us as survivors, even in our ability to respawn within the ARKs. She's also the main character, so it kind of makes sense why she made number 1. Doing this poll has been really interesting since it sort of reminded me just how many different characters there are, and how many my team and I have covered in the survival stories and other ARK lore videos, but most of all, how the community values them. My own ranking of the best characters is pretty similar to how the community voted here, so I can definitely relate. With the animated series coming out hopefully soon, I can't wait to see more from them, and I do wonder if and how these rankings might change once we can all watch the series and develop new ideas or perspectives on each character. Thanks everyone so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to smash the thumbs up button and subscribe for more content. And as always, good luck, survivors.